Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and coming to you from the 2022 Just for Laughs Moontower Comedy Festival. My sometime co-host, Miss Purrington, is resting at home. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. You can keep up with us on Twitter and Instagram at Comedy Wham or on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our new column, Rochelle Takes on Comedy. Have you checked out our events page for live shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW? If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. And if you want, you can give us a review of the survey and we'll share it and promo your show on Instagram. Now let's get back to our podcast. With over 200 interviews since its launch in 2016, the podcast is your anthropology lesson in Austin comedy, bringing you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and we usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the comedy world as fascinating off stage as it is on stage. Please rate and review us. Today we are recording live on location at the Driscoll Hotel. Thank you very much to Omnipop for letting us chat with our guest. She's from Canada and she has recently settled down in Los Angeles. Probably better weather. This is her first time at Moontower Comedy Festival and we're excited to have her. She is a 3-time runner-up for Canada's SiriusXM Top Comic. And her debut album, you're going to know her name by the end of my introduction. I usually don't reveal the name, but you're going to know. Her debut album, Little Bit of Buddle, is out now. It was a 2020 Juno Comedy Album of the Year winner. She has recorded her first special with Crave last year, and we hope to see it released this year.
Yeah.
I've already caught one of her shows, and she is absolutely fantastic. Oh, and I forgot, the thing that was going to reveal the full name, her podcast, Obsessed with Sophie Buddle, tackles obsessions as far-ranging as Beyonce and vinegar.
Yeah.
You already know her name, so let's get on with it. Comedy Wham presents our guest, Sophie Buddle.
Hello.
Hello.
What a wonderful long intro. That was great.
Bienvenue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. So, how did you learn French?
I was born in Belgium.
Oh, you were born in Belgium.
Yes.
That's so cool. And how do you like living here? It honestly feels like a kind of European city. Like I feel like with all the little shops and it's very walkable.
Very
compared
walkable,
to other American cities. I found this is like feels very European.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because if you don't live in the center of
then you still
town,
have to drive.
You have to drive. So
Okay.
there's not the great infrastructure of public transportation and trains.
Okay.
Like
at least downtown though, it's a pretty big area that you can walk around in, which is great for festivals. Like
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah, and Moontower does it right. Like they pick good venues within walking and Uberable distances.
Yes, totally. And how long have you lived here for?
In Austin, I think this is my 15th year, but I went to school here way long ago and left. Ended up going the wrong direction to Chicago and then finding a way to come down.
Do you have a comedy background? It feels like you're going around comedy cities.
No, I don't. Watching comedy 10 years ago was my therapy divorce. From a divorce. So I really jumped into comedy
That's great.
after that. I'd been a fan of comedy. Like I'm a religious SNL junkie. And so I've gone to see plenty of comedy, but it wasn't until 10 years ago that I really dug in. And this podcast started 6 years ago.
Okay, cool. I just started watching the new Kardashian show. This is related to what you said, I promise, I swear. And they're like masters of marketing, obviously, the Kardashian family. And this first episode of their new Keeping Up with Kardashian show is like leading up to Kim Kardashian hosting SNL, which is like what a great way to kick off a season. Like knowing how she ends up with Pete Davidson and stuff too. Like just what a hook. Yeah. And she did pretty good. Did you watch her? For who she is, I think it could have gone a lot worse.
I choose to, we just watched Lizzo's.
Yeah.
So she
How
was
was
great.
Lizzo?
She was great. It was really.
She's funny.
Yeah, she was very good.
Has Doja Cat done it yet?
I don't know. I'm of an age where the musical acts
I feel like she would do both.
Yeah.
She's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about her.
She's great. You would like her.
Other than that's an awesome name.
Yeah.
I'm a cat person, so.
You have cats?
I have one. Miss Purrington. That's she.
Miss Purrington.
Usually with my local interviews, comics that are based here in Austin, I record at my house.
Oh.
And from time to time, she wants to be involved, so you can sometimes hear her, wailing in the background. So I had to credit her.
Very cool.
Sophie, I have an official icebreaker question for you.
Okay, great.
And that is one word to describe your past.
One word to describe my past? That's a great question. Like my past from right now? Well, the thing, it's not going to be a good answer, but comedy. Like I've been doing stand-up since I was 15. So any past before that was just kind of childhood.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've just been doing comedy my whole life, really.
I have a 15-year-old, so to imagine him starting, that's just...
Yeah, and I started in Ottawa when I was 15, and my mom and I started going to the comedy club in Ottawa when I was 14, and we would go every week. Just to watch the amateur night as like a mother-daughter date thing.
Aww.
Yeah, it was really cute, and we really liked it. And we went every week for probably about a year. And because my mom's like an artist, she's cool. So when we'd go together, we would drink. We would each have like a martini or something. And a lot of the people that work at comedy clubs are stand-ups, obviously. So from becoming sort of regulars at the club, I got to know a lot of the comics around town. But I got to know everybody under the context that I was old enough to drink. So when I started actually doing stand-up, everyone thought I was older, and I sort of kept the lie going for a while, just so that I could go into all the clubs and stuff, but also it was like I didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so for the first year of doing stand-up, I was like I was doing like this weird adult character on stage where I was like pretending to be like 20 and, had all these jokes about sex and was like very much not having sex. So it made no sense. And yeah, I would, if I were to do it again, I would just do it, I'd write jokes about high school and stuff. Because my boyfriend actually, who I've been together with forever, he started when he was 15 as well in Hamilton, which is like a nearby town. And he started and just did jokes about being 15 and stuff. And he had a much more fun time at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is something that you hear a lot, or I hear a lot, is if you're true to yourself.
Totally. You got to write what you know.
Through.
Yeah, and it really reads if you're not being vulnerable.
It's
obvious. So definitely the first year of stand-up was a write-off. It was bad. Just trying to do some weird stuff.
So when you were going with your mom, it was just mother-daughter have fun dates.
Yeah.
When did it become, I want to go do this?
I think pretty quickly. Like, when you're a kid, like nothing's really scary.
Yeah.
And we're watching amateur night. It's not like we were watching like a Seinfeld or whatever. So half the people would bomb, and I was like, I could bomb like that. And then you see nothing happens. It's not a nightmare. Yeah. Somebody bombs. And also when you're 15, it doesn't really matter if you're good or not. People are just excited that you're doing anything. So the pressure was pretty low. Yeah. And I had been doing a lot of writing and acting stuff before that, and neither of those felt quite right for me. So when I found stand-up, it was like a good combination of performing and writing.
Yeah. Was your mom anxious about you doing it?
If she was, I couldn't tell. She seemed pretty. Both my parents are artists, so I think they were just glad that I was found something. Yeah. In my own field in art. Like my mom's a visual artist, and my dad's a musician. Okay. So they both, like, my mom had me in drawing classes, and my dad, put me in saxophone lessons, but neither of those really took off. They just wanted someone creative around to bounce stuff off of. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember your first joke?
I do remember my first joke. It was like, the thing is, it's sort of the same like brand that I have now, which is funny, but it's just bad. Like I had a joke that was like, I started comedy to end the stereotypes about blonde women. And I'm going to do that as soon as I figure out exactly what stereotype means. That's my first joke ever. And it's like, it's probably a meme or something. Like, it's like, so it's hacky, but that's how I started my comedy career. Yeah.
And how did you feel that first time that you...
I felt great. Well, I was performing at a club that's like famously good.
Oh.
So good, in fact, that there's rumors that festivals won't accept tapes from this club because everybody does so well that it's not an accurate read of their comedy. Wow. And I didn't know that then, so I just had my first set and did great and was like, oh, I should be a professional comedian, and immediately I'm a star. Mm-hmm. But everybody did the same. But it didn't take much for me. I was like, got it.
And when you're in school, like, I know my kid's schedule, it's intense. He's got activities, he's doing homework.
Yeah.
How do you balance this thing that requires, I mean, if it's anything like the States, it requires you to be up late at night?
It was very difficult because I was also playing pretty high-level soccer at the time. And it was like 3 or 4 practices a week, which were obviously in the evenings. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I would go to a show and ask to go up late and just be like drenched in sweat from soccer. And eventually I quit soccer because comedy was better for me than soccer. And like, you know, I'd have a show Friday night and then wouldn't want to get up for practice Saturday morning. And it was too hard to do both. But luckily I was able to skip a lot of school just without telling anybody, just to recover from my double life.
I'm gonna pull a I'm the old lady question. Mm-hmm. That you're 15, mm-hmm. you're giving this a try. How did you know that it was better? That comedy was better than, you know, sticking to a sport and high school?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same with when you find like a partner or a best friend or something. When you know, yeah. It just felt right. And for me, it's like, I think for anybody, it's if you're good at something a little bit at the beginning, it's easier to work on doing it. If you feel like you're good for your age or you're good for your skill level, then you feel a little ahead of the curve, and it feels like something that you should pursue. Like I saw this thing that I don't remember if it was like billionaires to talk about this or CEOs or something. I think it was CEOs. They say that most people have strengths and weaknesses, obviously, and try to improve their weaknesses to become a more well-rounded person. But very successful people only put all their energy into improving the thing that they're already very good or exceptional at, so that they become very, very good at that thing and become the top of their field. And then obviously, you know, CEOs, they're mostly bad people, I assume, so they don't become well-rounded and they don't improve socially or whatever, you know, their family life or whatever the rest of their life is lacking. But I thought that was good advice. Like, I still try to improve on my weaknesses, obviously, but I always really liked that as like because it's true, like the intuitive thing would be to try to balance your life and become better at the things that you're not good at. But it feels like a life hack, sort of. Yeah.
How were you received as, you know, this really young person starting out in comedy?
Well, I looked a bit older, and I told everybody that I was older, so I felt like I was just treated like any other 20-year-old open micer. I started 12 years ago, so there was really not a lot of women doing it when I started. There were 1 or 2 others in the city that I started in who were sort of doing it peripherally, like weren't around all the time. So it was mostly just me and men. And it's a bit different now. Like men kind of, whether or not they believe it or politically where they stand or whatever, they're aware that it's harder to be a woman now. Whereas back then, I think they thought it was easier, so they had kind of a chip on their shoulder about me doing it. And I think there was a bit of an attitude of like, that I was getting moved up too quickly because I was a girl and they wanted like a token girl. That was still sort of the mentality. But this was also before kind of the big comedy renaissance, like from Netflix specials and from like YouTube. Stand-up was really different when I started than it is now. Like now it feels like it's part of kind of the general vernacular of society. Like people know what a stand-up special is. Right. Whereas when I started, it was really like, especially in Canada, like nobody knew any Canadian comedians' names. There was no Canadian comedians that were household names. Like, there were some bigger people, like a Rick Mercer or whatever, who had their own TV shows, but there weren't specific stand-ups that anybody was really aware of. And so the Canadian comedy scene was like, you really had to do it just because you loved it. There wasn't like a clear future in it. And this is not to say there's not a ton of incredible comedians in Canada. It just wasn't, people didn't think about stand-up the same way they do now. Like, now there's like, it's on TikTok too. Like, I think that like teenagers know stand-up comics that they like now. And I remember, like, the only one that I knew who was American, wasn't even Canadian, but when I first started, the only stand-up I was aware of was Dane Cook, because he had a couple specials that would play on, like, Much Music or, like, the music TV channel once in a while. And, yeah, Dane Cook kind of randomly popularized stand-up for young people. And I know there's, like, a lot of stuff around Dane Cook and... you know, how he's dating teenagers or whatever. I don't know what he's up to now. But you know, he's always appealed to teenagers, right? And like for me and I had two stepbrothers at the time, and I remember we would watch Dane Cook and we would laugh so hard. And I think that I've never attributed anything to Dane Cook before. It's just random that I'm going on this huge Dane Cook tangent. But he made it seem cool, you know. So when I started, I thought it was cool, and then I kind of got into it, and I was like, oh, it's not as cool as I thought it was, but I still love it.
How long did it take for you to start getting some momentum for getting booked on shows?
So I was getting booked quite a lot when I first started, just on regular unpaid shows in Ottawa. And then when I turned 18, I moved to Vancouver to go to fashion school. And I dropped out immediately. It's not. I was there for 1 second. But when I moved to Vancouver is when I started getting paid work and started becoming a professional comic, because nobody there really thought of me as a teenager. Like I was 18, but because I didn't have the whole pretending to be older event in Vancouver, everybody took me a little bit more seriously, and I was able to grow my career at a more normal pace once I moved. But I do feel like a lot of the people that know me from when I started still kind of treat me like a teenager and think of me as a teenager, but I'm a very old woman now. I'm mature.
But you look so young. I want to go back to this fact. You went to fashion school, but at 15 you wanted to try stand-up and you stuck with it for 3 years. Why did you want to even try?
Well, my grades were not very good, and my family really wanted me to go to school, and it was between film school and fashion school, because I've always been very into fashion and I've always been very into film, and I missed the deadline for film school, so fashion school, no problem. And I knew that I wanted to go to Vancouver too, because my dad lives in Vancouver. I grew up mostly with my mom, and I would do like summers with my dad in Vancouver. And so I thought that would be a nice opportunity to go see him for what I thought was going to be like a year of fashion school. But I dropped out immediately, but I did stay in the city. And I really loved the comedy scene in Vancouver. I still do. I think that it's, I'm sure everybody says this about the scene they love, but it's really comparable to any of the best scenes in the world. Like the writing in the current Vancouver scene that I left, it's so strong, and there's so many good shows, and like there's a real comedy literacy in the city. So like when audiences go out, they really know what stand-up is. They're not like confused, and they understand the pacing, and they understand nuance, and it really makes a huge difference for comics. And it's also a smaller scene than Toronto or New York or LA or whatever. So everybody ends up doing the same good shows. Like if you're a really good open micer, you move up to the same shows that all the best headliners do regularly. So it improves those people so much, because they have to follow like the best headliner in the city on any given night. And you know, you're seeing how all the good people are building material and working on stuff and changing stuff. And I think that kind of melting pot is the wrong word, but because everybody's all meshed in together, it improves all of the newer people. And then it also keeps like the headliners fresh too, like, because I think in a lot of scenes it's easy to separate the kind of big working headliners from the newer people, and you know, just doing their own circuits. But I think doing shows all together really improves everybody.
I want to ask a question. We're going to nerd out about comedy, and Canadian comedy in particular.
Yeah.
Somebody that I talked to that is from Canada, can't remember who it was, because now every time I meet a Canadian comic, I ask this question, so it's all blurred together.
Yeah.
The observation was made that Canadian audiences are really difficult on comics because if you aren't quick-paced, they will just start talking. Like, they need you to be going non-stop. Before you say anything, that made it interesting to watch your set because you are very slow and methodical. There's another comic that I really like that is also a very slow and methodical comic. So it's like, well, they work. So I want to hear your take on me.
I think I would disagree with that. Like maybe for bar gigs and road gigs and a show where people want to be chatting anyway and are probably going to chat even if you're really fast paced. Like, of course, people are going to be talking on not a comedy club.
Yeah.
But I find that audiences like a slower pace in Canada. It's like, where are you going to go? Just sit and listen. Like this, you're already here. I do try to be kind of quicker at the beginning of my set, and I get some laughs, like just to establish that there's something coming.
Yeah.
But I definitely have had like showcase sets or shorter sets since I've moved to America, where I just pick my favorite joke that I'm going to do for the showcase set, but because it's so short, there's like not very many jokes in it, and I'm doing this weird slow thing, and then I'm like, I feel like I kind of forgot how to showcase since I've come here, and it's like you really do have to be punchier if you're doing like a really short set, but that's, learning for, sometimes you forget.
Yeah.
I think it happens to a lot of people that are on the road a lot, doing 45 minutes, doing an hour. You forget that a 5-minute set's got to be kind of rapid fire.
Yeah. And so many comics have commented on that at the couple of shows that I've seen where it's a lot of people. Like the Canadian show, it was 4 comics, whereas some of the showcases have like 10 comics. So you can't do more than 7 or 8 minutes.
Totally.
And some people are like, yay, this is fun. And others are like, I don't know how to pick just like 7 or 8 when I'm used to an hour.
I know, you're still saying hello at 7 or 8.
I couldn't help but not just laugh at the thought, but a Canadian hello. Hello.
I know there's been a couple things that I forgot. Like there was something that somebody just pointed out to me that Americans say mom, like instead of mum.
Oh yes.
But it's like it's not like I'm being British. Like it's just, I feel like mum is like it just comes out of your mouth easier.
That's true.
Yeah.
Go home and tell my son, you need to call me mum now.
Yeah. I mean, you're European.
That's true.
Yeah. Belgium. You're drinking your bowl of milk for breakfast. Thank you, Mommy.
So you spent a lot of years then in Vancouver in that comedy scene. When did you start thinking you wanted to move out of Canada?
Well, I've always wanted to live in America. Even before I started stand-up, I kind of pictured myself in New York. And I didn't really realize how difficult of a path it would be. Like, I kind of pictured it like in the movies and stuff. You see someone living in a town, and then, they graduate high school, and they're like, I'm going to move to the big city. I'm just going to go to New York. But Canadians can't do that unless you're, like, going to school or you have a specific job or something. And so it's been kind of in the back of my mind for my whole comedy career, because once in a while a Canadian will move to America just based on comedy, and there used to be some legal loopholes that I will not divulge, but there used to be some kind of sneakier ways for Canadians to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that got closed. So I think as soon as I started getting national level success, I realized that I would be eligible to apply for the O1 visa, which is the exceptional person's visa. And it's very embarrassing because you have to ask all of your favorite comics to write you a letter that says that you're exceptional and that you're going to be an asset to America and that you're the best comic they've ever seen, and like these are crazy letters. And it's like, it's all favors. Like, it's all big American comics that I've opened for, like, once or twice that I'm very, like, shy around. And I have to, you know, text them or email them and be like, hey, is it okay if I write a letter on your behalf saying that I'm the best comedian you've ever seen? And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's for the law. It's not for me. I just, it's so embarrassing.
Now in your credits, you can say so-and-so said, I'm the best comic.
I know,
I've
I
ever
swear to
seen."
them, I was like, nobody will ever see this letter. It's just between us and the U.S. government.
That's so wild. I'd heard about this, like a person of exceptional talent.
Yes, it's humiliating to apply for. Because it's also like, if it comes back and they're like, you're not exceptional. We have all these letters from people saying you are, and then we watched it 5 minutes in, and we're like, too slow paced. Maybe pick it up a little. Canadian.
The heckling society of America gets wind of you.
Well, in my head, I was like, what if I get an immigration officer that doesn't, like, get me?
Like the in-home visits, do they come and watch, you know, a set to see what's...
They come and we have some chit-chat, and they're like, if you don't have some anecdotes right off the top, I don't think you're going to make it here.
I assume you want to keep the names of the people that you approached private. I'm trying to get a sense for, like, can you give us a teaser about anyone that you asked?
I mean, I asked kind of most of the... Like, why don't I tell you some of the people I've opened for?
Okay.
So, I've, you know, Nikki Glazer and Reggie Watts and Nick Thune and Moshe Kasher. Like, those are all people that have come up to Canada to do mostly Just for Laughs. And I've been part of the Canadian element of the Just for Laughs festivals many times. And often have been slotted in just to open for them, just sort of based on my good graces with Just for Laughs. Like, not based on any comedy recommendations. And then I've gotten along with people, and, you know, we have a coffee or whatever, and and then now that I've come to America, I have, like, the thing is, when you meet somebody famous or somebody that you really like or you're a big fan of, and you meet, you're like, this was an impactful meeting, and we're best friends, and they love me as much as I love them. And then in my head, I was like, okay, when I move to America, I have all these best friends, and they're amazing. And then I was like, oh, they have, you know, families and children and lives and real friends that they've met more than once. So it's a bit of a rude awakening.
How did you celebrate the day that you got your official, okay, you are exceptional, we'll take you?
Oh, I think I cried. I was really relieved because it took a really long time as well, and I'm really bad with paperwork. I got diagnosed with ADHD, which I know everybody has, but, like, paperwork is, like, for me, it's really, really challenging to get, and it was, like, a lot to get done. And it was a lot on my end to get done, too. Like, my lawyer did a lot, but a lot is left up to you as an individual. And so basically the whole pandemic, I was just, like, white knuckling through, like, so much paperwork, and it's already depressing, and you can't go out and do shows. And I was like, I'm writing all these letters about how I'm amazing. I haven't done a set in a year. It just, like, it felt like a real low in my life. And it was, like, very frustrating too, because right at the beginning of the pandemic was when I won the Juno, which in Canada is a big deal, and usually you can tour a lot and get a lot of, like, money just from the, you know, people want to have you on because you just won the Juno, and do a lot of press and do all this stuff, and it was really, like, right as the pandemic started. In fact, I was in line to board my flight to go to the Juno Awards, and I got a text from one of the producers that said, don't get on the plane. And I was like, ooh, is there a bomb? I love this, like, dramatic text, right? And I was like, why not? And she was like, the Junos are going to be canceled. It hasn't been announced yet, but I wanted to tell you because I knew you were flying in today, so I thought I might be able to catch you. And so I had to go up to the front desk, lining up with everyone that's getting on the plane, being like, I'm actually not going to get on this plane. And the lady was like, okay, like, thanks for waiting in line. And I was like, no, I need to get my luggage off. And she was like, okay, what does your luggage look like? I was like, it's plain black. There's no features. Just go find the black bag that's mine. That's full of my dreams. And yeah, so I got my bag and I went back, and then that's when the whole country shut down. It was right at that moment. And I felt like I still haven't really been able to reap my Juno reward. I mean, it's too late now. There's been winners since me. Like, it's not even important anymore. And so that happened, and then I was just sitting at home, not enjoying this little bit of momentum that in showbiz, like, you work 10 years to get a bit of momentum, and then just came to a screeching halt, and I was just sitting at home, working on this visa, writing these letters, not doing sets, having my ADHD, and then finally the pandemic starts coming to an end. We apply for the visa, and then it comes in, and it just was, it couldn't have been a bigger relief. Like, it was really a light at the end of the tunnel.
The advantage that you had to persevere through that was that you've known you wanted to do this since you were 15.
Yeah.
So nothing was going to stop you.
But also, I've sunk so much of my life into it that I'm kind of trapped now. Like, it would be so random to go apply for a job, and they're like, so you've never had a job? I'm like, that's right. This would be my first. So, we'll see.
That doesn't happen very often, does it?
They're like, never in your life have you had a job? Did your parents have money? I'm like, no, actually, not at all. You'd be shocked how little money they have.
Like, not even the fast food gig?
No. The thing is, I worked at Starbucks for many years. I worked a lot of minimum wage jobs, right. but it's, I feel that's random.
Yeah.
Like, I've had no other things that I was building towards. Yeah. Like, I think usually if you're working at Starbucks for forever, it's because you have a side hustle or try to go back to school or something.
Since you had moved from the Ottawa area to Vancouver, you already had a skill set to be able to go into a new comedy scene and feel your way around and figure out how to, make your way.
Yeah.
How did that feel going Vancouver to LA? I mean, it's still all fresh.
Yeah. I've only been there for a couple months, and I've been mostly on the road. So I'm still I'm still trying to make friends and figure out what my grocery store is going to be. But it is totally the same feeling of, like, being kind of the new kid, and it is kind of like there's extra elements now, because in stand-up and also in all artist communities, and probably just all business, like, if someone is new and they're getting stuff, that's not, like, people are not happy about that. Like, I think people are mostly, like, want something for themselves or for their friends that they started with and came up with. And so I feel like there's maybe a little bit of, like, because nobody knows me. I've, grown fully in obscurity in Canada. And so I think there's a possibility that people are seeing my name on stuff and are thinking, like,
who is she?
Who is she, basically? And I'm just trying to show that I've been doing stand-up for a long time, and I'm a real comic. Because I am young, too, so there's a possibility people think I'm an industry plant coming in. And then also there's a likelihood that I'm not on anybody's mind as well. So these are all things in there. But I'm going around, I'm trying to make friends. I'm trying to make girlfriends specifically, because I feel like men are very available. Like, not for, like, I have a boyfriend, like, not for, like, dating and stuff, but whenever I ask a male comic to hang out, they're like, yeah, I can do it, like any day of the week at any time. And I'm like, okay, great. And then I find women that I'm trying to hang out with are like, well, I have my business meeting during the day, and then I have this at night, and then I have a show, and then it's like, women just work a lot harder in this industry, so they're a lot busier. Yeah. But it's so important to have girlfriends. Yeah. But I'm making a couple of girlfriends. I made a friend this week. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's why I do festivals, to make one friend. It's always my goal.
You said you were on the road a lot.
Yes.
Is your own tour or supporting?
Yeah, my own. Awesome. I'm headlining all over America.
Nice. I saw you were coming back in May.
I was supposed to headline Cap City, but it's still under construction, so we're finding another date for that. But I'm headlining all over America, which is, like, truly living my dream, because it took me a really long time to get moved up to headliner in Canada, because everyone thought of me as so young, and I've been doing comedy for just as long as a lot of my male counterparts that were moved up to headliner pretty quickly, because a lot of comedy club owners and bookers choose based off of their own comedy taste and sensibility, which makes sense, but it's, they're mostly choosing other men their age that are talking about their wife and their kids or whatever. And so I was just really not invested in or taken a chance on, I felt. And like you guys call it middles here, or features?
Features,
yeah. So I was co-middling, like co-featuring for years. Like I had a record for the most co-feature, like not even full. Like I was doing 12 minute sets. I couldn't get them to move me up from 12 minute sets to 20 minute sets. And the thing is, like, whether or not I was ready, I was, but whether or not I was ready, it's like you have to move comics up before they're ready so that they can get used to doing that longer amount of time. And a lot of women comics, I think, do not get invested in the same way that men will be given an opportunity before they're ready. And so I was just really frustrated doing all these co-middles for so long, and then finally moved up to middle, and then to a point where I had been doing comedy for 10 years, and I was trying to record an album, and I approached my home club, and I was like, I want to record an album, like, please let me headline a weekend so I can record an album. And they just basically refused, and I said, am I ever going to headline? And in so many words they said no.
Wow.
And so that
your home club,
my home club that had for the most part invested in me would not move it up at all. And so finally I switched clubs. I went to a different club, and I said, I'll come over to this club if I can headline. And then they right away were like, of course you can headline. And I was like, I have wasted so many years of my life. Yeah. And so coming here and then headlining right away really like means a lot to me, because it was so frustrating for so long. And in my head I kind of thought that it might happen again. Like I thought I might come here, and because nobody knew me, I would have to just kind of do opening sets and co-middle again for 10 years. Yeah. But yeah, so it's just a huge relief that I'm headlining, and I'm getting like really comfortable doing long sets now, and it feels really fun. It feels really natural to me, and I wish it had maybe started sooner, but I'm over it. I'm not bitter about it. As you can hear, I'm still talking about it.
Well, and you started young, so you've got a really long future.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're touring a lot, you're not figuring out which club is going to be your home club in LA.
Well, the Improv has been putting me up a lot, and I really like it there, and it's close to my house too.
Oh, nice.
And I haven't started doing those scooters yet, but I think that it's like a perfect distance to scooter. It's because it's like 7 minutes in the car, or it's like a 20-minute walk, but I think it's like a 10-minute scooter. And my hair will be wind-blown. Like I really think, because like that was like one of the things that I really loved about my first home club, the one that would not headline me, but still gave me like tons of sets, and I really became the comic I am today at this club in Vancouver, which is now closed, but probably because they wouldn't headline me. But it was like a really nice 10-15 minute walk from my place in Vancouver, and I just have such good memories of like walking to the club and thinking about my set, and then leaving the club and like listening to my set on my phone, and like I feel like that's when I get most of my writing done, because I'm not really a sit down and write kind of comic. I really work on stage, and so I really like that time leading up to a show and after a show to that's when all my ideas come and when I figure stuff out. And so I think with the Improv, it's like a perfect distance for me to do that again. And LA is a very driving city, so and it's like I don't really feel the same way if I'm in the car. I feel like walking forward makes my brain move forward, and so I guess scootering won't work then. But still, I'm figuring it out.
And did you debate LA versus New York as your...
Yeah, I did. I've spent some time in New York, and I spent some time in LA before I decided. Yeah. But every time I left New York, I was so tired. And every time I left LA, I felt refreshed. And I think it is sort of a choice, because the reason you're tired is because you're doing so many shows and you're working and you're potentially growing more. Yeah. And then if you're leaving refreshed, maybe you're not doing enough. But I just kind of wanted to... I'm a West Coast girl, too. Like, Vancouver is, like, it doesn't snow, and I moved to Vancouver for a lot of the reasons because it didn't snow, and I like good weather. Yeah. And so I do really like New York, but I think it's... and I was just there. I was there, like, a week ago doing some shows. But I don't want to live my life exhausted.
Yeah, nobody does.
Yeah.
No one does.
But like if I get a job there or something, I'll be thrilled to move there. I just I have a nice big apartment in LA, and it's sunny, and making one friend once in a while.
Yeah. Yay, new friend.
Yay.
What was it that motivated you to record the album and then tape your special?
So for my album, I had been doing comedy for 10 years, and it was more, I thought, a good angle to trick this club into headlining me, which did not work. But I was like, okay, well, I already told everyone I'm doing an album, so now I have to do it. And it was sort of just a collection of the first 10 years of my stand-up. And there's no, the best way to sort of retire that material, I think, is to record it, because you can kind of lean on it forever, and I didn't want to be one of those comics that does the same act for 100 years. Yeah. So I recorded it to sort of retire it. And then my special was like, they were putting on, Just for Laughs was producing, I think, 7 specials that festival, and they asked me to do it. And it was kind of right at the end of the pandemic, so I was like feeling very rusty, and I was very nervous. I had about a month to like get back into the swing of things. And so it's a kind of interesting moment in time, that it was recorded in, because I was like feeling really rusty, but it's also so excited, and I had all of this like baggage from the year, like being at home and writing these embarrassing letters, and like you can see on my face, you're like, she wrote a letter that was humiliating this year. But I'm really excited for it to come out. It's like I think it's 35 minutes. It was supposed to be half hours, but I did too much because I was overeager. And I think it's supposed to come out this spring. The first one has already come out, and they're doing one a month, starting a month or 2 ago. So they got to put it out now. That's clock's ticking. Yeah, and it's like it's probably the edgiest set that I've put out. And I'm a pretty dark comic. Like, I don't really swear, but I cover very dark and sometimes political things. And so I am feeling a little bit nervous about it coming out, but it only airs in Canada. So if I get canceled in Canada, like, don't tell anyone. No one will know.
What do they call it when they is it repatriation? They might repatriate you so that they can
like claim me back.
Yeah, just so they can say this is too dark.
Yeah, when I go home for Canadian Thanksgiving, who taught me? When is American Thanksgiving?
Third Thursday of November.
That's November. Okay.
You'll start seeing the decorations in August for it.
Oh yeah, of course.
You got plenty of time to prepare. Do you have enough experience now to know, like, I really like American audiences versus I really like Canadian audiences?
Yeah, I really like American audiences. Like, I'm very fascinated by Americans, and like growing up, I was like I've always been very politically engaged. Like, when I was in high school, I worked on Parliament, like, which is our White House, but it's a different system, obviously. But I was working at Parliament because I was really interested in American politics, because it's such a spectacle, and because it's not my country, it's not my people. Like, when stuff goes bad, I don't have the same like glaze of, I don't have the same like ties to it, so I feel like I can just enjoy it as like reality TV as opposed to a reflection of the nation I was born in. And so I've always really liked American politics, which is a somewhat reflection of Americans, and so I've always been really interested in it. And I like getting to know American sensibilities too, because there's like some things Americans are very sensitive about, but in general, Americans are much less sensitive than Canadians in a comedy that I feel that I've noticed. But I really like it. I really like doing stuff here, and Americans are like, I just find Americans to be very extroverted. And so if a crowd really likes you, they'll be really loud, and they'll follow you on social media afterwards, and they'll come up to you afterwards, and like they'll go out of their way to tell you that they like you. Whereas like I feel like if Canadians like you, they won't even laugh necessarily. They'll just like you quietly to themselves, and then they'll go home. And so I feel very encouraged by that. And then, on the flip side, if they don't like you, like, also you'll hear about it. Americans love to, freedom of speech or whatever, so they'll let you know either way.
Whatever that thing is.
Yeah, but it's nice. It's very open. I feel like it's like a good comparison, because I'm from a family that really, like, doesn't talk about stuff. Like, we have a great relationship, but like stuff doesn't get brought up. It's very like, my grandpa was British, so it's a very like Britishy sensibility. It's a lot of just knowing glances and stuff like that. And my boyfriend has this like loud Italian family, and they're always yelling, like someone will slight someone else and immediately gets brought up, and then everyone gets involved. And like, I feel like Canada is my family and America is my boyfriend's family, and I love it because it's so open and expressive and like aggressive, and it's like there's just a lot going on. It's like it's very entertaining to me.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about being a performer?
About being a performer, well, about being a stand-up performer specifically, I think when something bad happens to me in my life, it's kind of cushioned by the fact that I can write a bit about it, and people will probably, everyone's had bad stuff happen to them, so it's helpful to talk about it. It's helpful for me to work through stuff because I never learned how to talk about my feelings with my family. And then it's helpful for the audience because people have lived through hard stuff, and it's easier to work through your own stuff if somebody else is talking about it and doing analogies and doing the work on it. Yeah. So I think the biggest advantage to being a stand-up performer is when something bad happens to you, there's an immediate repercussion of good things.
Yeah. And on the flip side, is there anything you don't like?
Yes.
About being a performer?
Definitely. Like, kind of on the same note, when there's something difficult to talk about, if you're having a bad day, it's not fun to hear about because you have all these extra, like people pick up on so much subconscious body language and micro facial expressions and all this stuff. So if you're feeling weird and then you're talking about something heavy on top of that, it's gonna be extra draining on you, and it's gonna be extra uncomfortable for people watching. And yeah, basically, if you're in a bad mood or you're going through something, you can't really work properly. Yeah. Especially if it's like an all-encompassing thing, like if you go through an insane breakup or something like that, like, or a parent dies or like something horrible. It's not like, oh great, I can't wait to go and bond with the audience over this. Yeah. It's like you're trying to heal, and then you can't really talk about heavy stuff on stage because it'll be obvious that there's this weird extra thing happening. So I think it's the same. I think it's basically just that you're really wearing your heart on your sleeve, and you're very vulnerable as a performer, which can be a strength or a weakness depending on your current mental state. Yeah.
When you were talking about that as an example, like my immediate reaction was Tig Notaro did it.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
You're still young.
Yeah.
So maybe when you can approach bad things and give it on stage, and it actually.
Tig Notaro is also a genius. Like, that's not just for all performers. It's like just do what Tig Notaro did. It's like, I would love to, but
I mean, we don't all wish everybody to go through what Tig had to go through in order to.
No, but Tig is someone that wouldn't have to ask people to write exceptional letters. People would just already write it. They'd already be written. It wouldn't be an issue.
Should ask the barkeep for the letter. And I'll say it.
Yeah.
I had a really hard time finding your podcast. I don't know if it's my app. I wanted to listen to a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Could not do it. My player won't. You're still recording your podcast.
Yeah. I took a break while I was moving, basically, which ended up extending into a couple months. But they're coming back out again, and now I have American guests, so we'll call it season 2. Yeah. But yeah, it's called Obsessed with Sophie Buddle, so it should be on everything. Okay. But I took a break from recording them for a little while just because I have a lot of balls in the air. Yeah. But I really love doing it, and I think that it's really nice to put out a podcast. I know everybody makes fun of stand-ups because everybody has a podcast, but I think it is really nice because we're not musicians. We can't put out a single or sample or whatever all the time. Like, we have a limited amount of good material, and putting out a podcast is a way to put out your comedy on a regular basis at just a different pace. Yeah. So, you're having stories, you're having anecdotes from your week. If someone's a fan of your stand-up, and a fan of podcasts, like, they'll enjoy that. Right. Whereas it's not sustainable to put out your A material on Instagram every day and get,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to start wrapping up.
Great.
Is there anything, well, actually, before we do that, because I can't listen, and the very first one I'm going to listen to is the vinegar one.
Do you remember who was that one?
I don't. What is the craziest topic that somebody has been obsessed over?
So my friend Abdul did revenge, and he's like a very kind, like one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And so the fact that he picked revenge, I just got a real kick out of. But my other friend Drew did eggs, like, and it's so funny because like I give comics so much time. Like I'm like, do you want to do my podcast? And they're like, sure. And I'm like, okay, it's called Obsessed. We talk about stuff we're obsessed with. Do you have an obsession? And they're like, yes. And then, you know, we meet up and I'm like, do you have an obsession before we start? And they're like, what? Like they're blindsided every time. And I'm like, something you're obsessed with. And they're like, yeah, I got something. And I'm like, do you want to take a minute? And they're like, just hit record, hurry. And I'm like, okay. And then we turn it on and he's like, I love eggs. And I'm like, oh, we can't talk about that for 2 hours. Yeah. But I love comics. It's just, I've noticed, always during festivals, you're always running into other comics, right? And sometimes in life, you also run into other comics. And the thing that I love the most about it is like they're always in the middle of something. Whereas if you run into a regular friend, they're just going to the store or something. But if you run into a comic, they're always like trying to get something open and they just were at a store and they didn't have the belt that they wanted. And like they're always like deep in the middle of chaos. And I found that all this week is so fun. Yeah.
Well, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want people to know about you?
No, I don't think so. I wanted to plug my podcast, but we've done that in a way.
And we'll do another final plugs at the end. So.
Yeah, but this has been a really fun podcast. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. All right, so I'm going to ask you my closing question.
Wonderful.
Which is one word to describe your future.
Ooh. I can't say comedy again, obviously. I'll think of something else.
It's open-ended. Do what you want.
Money. Say money. Trying to get some US dollars in my pocket.
That makes sense. Well, if you're touring at the clubs, you're on your way. So
yeah, I'm basically breaking even, so
nice.
Not to flex.
Flex. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents. Sophie Buddle, tell us where we can find you on social media and promote your projects.
I'm Sophie Buds on Instagram, which people always think is a weed thing, but my last name is Buddle. It's just short form for Buddle. Sophie Buddle on Twitter and Obsessed with Sophie Buddle podcast. I'm there.
And if you're Canadian, you'll get to watch her special this spring.
Yeah.
Maybe Crave will bring it here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Sophie got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Sophie Buddle. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Valerie.